Hey, Glenn here, the People's Carpenter, in my workshop, to which you are very welcome once more. I have finished that walnut slab table. That's all you get to see for now. You have to keep watching if you want to see how it turned out. And do keep watching, please, because if you do, you'll be treated to this old man ranting about how much stuff costs. In particular, I just got fed up about the cost of all the various hard wax oil finishes out there. Honestly, man, I think they're a racket. They're an absolute rort. They are a rip-off. Watch the video and see whether or not you agree with that assessment. Oh, and check out the coffee table. That's nice too. So, as per my last video, to talk like a workplace email, the legs are in. And this video will be about finishing things off, about making the top look nice. And the first thing I'm going to do is something I will do just because I can and because I think it'll look nice. If you're into woodworking, chances are you already know this, but one thing you can do is create a wedged tenon, where the end of the tenon is visible poking out the other side of the mortise. You can split it, and this is what you would do when the tenon is designed to not already completely fill the mortise tightly. You split the tenon and then drive in a wedge, and you can do that with a decorative piece of wood that's a different color from the tenon. Drive it in, make the tenon really tight in that mortise. Now, I didn't do that. The tapered tenon in the mortise is already reasonably secure, plus the glue, of course, so I'm not doing it for the purposes of strength, but just because I can, I'm going to do something. I've already done it on the other three legs. I'm just waiting for that to dry. So I've got my sliding bevel gauge. The other day I went to refer to this and the name completely eluded me. I think it was in the last video. But yeah, sliding bevel gauge to reproduce the angle of the leg. I'm going to drill a 5mm hole. Oh, not quite the center, but it's pretty close. Using a 5mm walnut dowel, which I purchased, I'm going to glue that down there. And I think that should be a nice decorative feature. Given that it's a walnut top, I think it'd be nice to have a sort of walnut dot in the middle of the tenon sticking out. Well, not sticking out, but you know, visible. Okay. Let this dry for a few hours. I'll come back this evening maybe, or tomorrow. We'll see. So, the walnut dowel down the middle looks great. Those that don't will look better under finish because I've just got little bits of dust in the pores at the moment. What doesn't look great is those gaps. So, let's make some gap filler. Make some. Not some stuff that we bought. I'm going to make some. For these gaps around most of these tenons and the small bits of tear out, well, there is really just, oh no, there's another one over there, some small amounts of tear out. I'm going to fill that space. I've just used my random orbital sander with the catcher. I call it a catcher, like a lawnmower. I suppose that's what it's called. I gave the top a couple of once-overs. I guess that makes it a twice-over, with the sander and the catcher attached, and caught some walnut dust, which I'm now going to mix up into a paste, as I did with the bow tie, to fill any gaps around that. Okay, basically like plastering a wall. Come back when everything's dry and give it a good sand up. Alright, I'll go around the entire tabletop and do all the spots that I think need doing before the final sand. Now, I did cut the legs all to the same length before I assembled it, but during the assembly process, when I was banging in the legs, the tenons didn't all stick out exactly the same amount on the other side, so I have to be prepared for the fact that the table's not going to be completely level, and sure enough it's not. I've tried it out on several floors. There's a very flat concrete floor from the new part of the garage back there, and I tried it out in my kitchen and on my bench top, and they all agree. So this one leg here is ever so slightly shorter than the others, and there is a way of making sure that you cut them all to the same length to fix that problem. What you do is you put packing under that leg, in this case using corrugated cardboard, until there's no rocking at all. I'm just going around now making sure that there's no rocking on any of those legs. Okay, and it looks like we're pretty good now. And then, okay, so the table is level, and then what I do is take a scrap of plywood, sit it next to every leg, and draw a line. In fact, I'll do it on several faces of the leg just to make the cutting as precise as I can. And now what I'll do is I'll cut each leg off at that line, which should mean that then they will then all be the same length. I'm cutting just about all the way through on each leg because I figure it would just be more difficult to cut if the table became wonky because one of the legs was shorter. And then when they're all mostly cut, I'll go around and finish them off. We're behind my workbench where there isn't much room, but I know the floor is nice and flat. And there's really, unless I really force it, there's no rocking there. Everything seems to be nice and level. So that's good. Now I'll just go over the legs in any areas that are a little bit rough. I'll give them a light sand, and then we'll come to the finishing. Done a bit of a round over on that edge, and all the other edges I will just slightly chamfer to discourage them from chipping or breaking if this table gets dragged along the ground. You shouldn't drag wooden legs across the ground, but you know what people do. Okay, we're there. We're at the point now where all that remains is to apply finish to the legs and to the top. It won't be the same finish. For the legs, I'm going to apply a tung oil blend. It's kind of a dusty bottle. Now when you buy tung oil, a lot of things might have the words tung oil on the bottle. It's usually not pure tung oil unless it specifically says pure tung oil. This is made by Supreme Natural Wood Finishes. It's called Tung Oil Blend, and I don't know what the proportions are, but it's a mixture of pure tung oil and vegetable turpentine. And the purpose of the turpentine helps it to go on thinner, faster, easier, helps it to absorb better into the wood, and it certainly dries and cures much more quickly. I really like this oil. I think it's a nice, simple product. I don't remember the price for this. What size is this? It looks like a litre. Yeah, 1 litre. Don't remember the price, but I'll put it on the screen. The only dumb thing that it came with is this spray bottle. It's good for the first few applications, but after that it just gets gunged up with oil and it doesn't work. So you end up just using it like a normal bottle, where you just pour it onto your application cloth or directly onto the wood. In this case I'll be applying it with a paper towel. There are a couple of things that you do during the build of anything, whether it's a guitar or a piece of furniture or what have you, that make a dramatic change where things stop looking like a work in progress or just pieces of wood and start looking like a nice product, like an item of furniture or whatever it is. And one of them is, I think one of them is where you treat edges, and it's no longer just a plain edge, but you put on, say, a round over or a cove, or even just sanding the edge smooth or something, and then it starts to look refined, like a piece of work that you've made. And the other is when you apply a finish, and an oil finish in particular, because it's so quick and it just transforms something so rapidly from just raw wood that you're working on to something that looks like a thing that's been made. I'll apply a couple of coats, and you don't have to do anything between coats. I'll just apply one to each leg and then apply a second one after that. Each leg now has 2 coats of that tung oil blend, and that's perfectly sufficient. It just provides them with some protection, and it looks rather nice. In regard to getting oil on the underside of the tabletop, I changed my mind and thought, well, if you can't beat them, I could have beaten them, I could have wiped it off, join them. And so I ended up giving that a couple of coats as well, and it looks nice. You can still see some swirls from where I was rubbing it on. I will buff that off before I flip the whole thing over. I'll give that oil some time to dry a bit more. It's Saturday evening now. I will return to this coffee table on Sunday after lunch. One thing I will just comment on in passing, in case at some point someone sees it and says, what on earth is that? Why are there these brown circles there? 4 of them. One there, one there, one there, and one on the opposite side that looks kind of like that. I did that. And looking back, I now think I was being overly cautious, but it doesn't matter. It's because there was some, what do I call it? Not figuring. Just the surface of the wood made it kind of obvious that it wasn't simply straight grain right at the end of the tenon, and I thought, is that going to be strong enough? Is that going to be stable? I actually think it is, but what I did is that I drilled in with the 5mm drill bit and put some walnut rods through there just to ensure that there was some decent wood. I was looking back, it was really unnecessary, but that's what that is. That's walnut. Just in case someone buys this and goes, what's all this then? I've sanded this top down to 800 grit, which is very smooth. Very smooth indeed. You don't have to go that fine, but I did. And I'm going to put a finish on it. And I thought to myself, okay, there are some finishes that I've used and I like, and I could use any of those. But there are some finishes that I haven't used, but which seem very popular among YouTube woodworkers who have large, nice-looking workshops and who produce high-end, expensive, but fair enough, because it's high-end pieces of furniture. There's a finish that they like to use. Maybe I'll try that. You can hear the birds maybe running around on my workshop roof. I'm not going to try that. And it led me down a rabbit hole of wanting to just rant about it. So I am going to rant about it. I wanted to use a hard wax oil finish. Rubio monocoat, called monocoat because you only put one coat mono. That's very popular. It looks nice. Why don't I just tell you what I'm ranting about? For reference, 1 litre of boiled linseed oil, which is about the most basic oil finish you could wish for. Boiled linseed oil in New Zealand, 1 litre, which is 33.8 US fluid ounces for my American audience. In New Zealand dollars, and if you're not in New Zealand, some of these prices will seem very high. I mean, they're all somewhat high, but they're not as high as you think. They're not US dollars. 1 litre of boiled linseed oil is $21.98. Okay, that's what that costs. If you want to get a bit flasher and get Danish oil, which is an ambiguous thing, that people's different Danish oil concoctions are, well, they're different from each other. But Danish oil it's a mixture of oil and other things. I used to think it was just oil and polyurethane, and in some cases it is, but anyway, Danish oil, 1 litre of Danish oil, so 33.8 US fluid ounces, is $63.98. Now that's at the point where I start saying, okay, this is a somewhat expensive finish, but if you like it, you'll buy it and use it. Okay, that's 1 litre. 390 mils, that's 0.39 litres, not very much liquid at all, of Rubio monocoat. That's 13.19 ounces, so we're talking a small quantity. In New Zealand dollars is $105. Okay, remember 63.98 may have sounded like a lot for Danish oil, but you got a whole litre, that's 1,000 mils. 390 mils of Rubio monocoat is $105. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. Like, no one should be willing to pay that amount for such a small quantity of what it looks like quite a nice finish, but that's absurd. People in New Zealand say that if you don't want to spend the money for Rubio monocoat, a good alternative is made by Osmo, Pollux oil, and they have a tin that is 375 mils, so slightly less than what's in the Rubio monocoat tin that I just mentioned. This is 12.68 ounces, $68.35. So it's a heck of a lot cheaper than Rubio, but still $68.35, whereas for a litre of Danish oil you paid $63, so that's a whole litre. And the hard wax oils are just like this. 500 mils of Evolution hard wax oil, so this is 16.9 ounces, $86.25. 750 mils, so it's a little bit more, of a product called Caboodle Clear Hard Wax Oil, and that's 25.36 ounces, $95.19. I mean, these are still relatively small amounts. This is all less than a litre so far. $95. There's one that I heard was cheaper, but it's not really. It's a product called Oli Natura Hard Wax Oil for 250 mils. That's the smallest amount so far. That's just 1 metric cup, 8.45 ounces. That's $50.50. That's like $200 for 1 litre if you were to buy it in these small quantities. Of course, you wouldn't do it that way. The best offering that I was able to find, and this is one that I will try because it's just a more reasonable price than most, 1 litre of, and I don't know how to say this, is it Liberon hard wax oil? That's 33.8 ounces, $79. Now for a hard wax oil, that sounds pretty good. Still more than Danish oil, but nothing like Rubio. But the worst thing about it is the one that I am going to use is the most expensive because I've already got some. It wasn't this expensive when I purchased it a couple of years ago, and it does go a long way. But Odie's oil, this is from an Australian website called Hammeroo. They have an address of hammeroo.co.nz to fool some New Zealanders into thinking it's based here, but it's not. 266 mils of Odie's oil, so not very much. 266 mils, that is 9 ounces, from Hammeroo, costs $161. Now I know this goes a very long way, especially for me because I don't use it much, but there's no world in which that makes sense. What I'm holding there in my hand, $161. It is a small jar. I'm sorry, Odie's oil, I love your product, but you have lost the plot. That is mental. There is no justification for that. I'm going to use it because I've got it, but I'm just not going to buy that again. I cannot, I mean, look, as I mentioned in a video not long ago, I'm out of work. So I couldn't afford to spend much anyway, but a hobby woodworker should never spend that kind of money on that amount of product. That's the end of the rant because it is, but that's nuts. Utterly stupid. I'm going to apply 2 heavy coats, and for those who haven't seen me apply this before, you apply it with a non-woven abrasive pad. So this is some synthetic steel wool. It's pretty fine. I forget if it is 000 or 400, but it's fine stuff. So you are further smoothing the wood when you apply this stuff. And yes, I know it looks nice and it smells nice and it is a nice product, but $161 for that small jar. Look, nope. Looks amazing. I'll come back soon and buff off the first coat and apply a second coat. It's a little bit later in the day and I'm applying coat number 2. You never need much for any coat, but coat number 2 will require even less because I've already penetrated the surface. And in fact, just the small amount that's already in the pad might almost have been enough, but this just makes sure that it's got a pretty heavy coat on it. Just doing what I always do, softening this furniture wax with some hot air. The fellow who bought the previous coffee table from me, which was also finished with Odie's oil and then waxed, asked me what he would need to do going forward to treat it. Would he have to re-oil it to look after it? And the answer is no. I wouldn't expect anyone to be buying a product like Odie's oil or whatever expensive oil was used on the table. All you need to do with something like this is every now and then wax it. And there's no sponsorship relationship going on, but Voodoo Molly Vintage Wax is one that I use all the time and I like, but really it's just a beeswax finish. Any kind of beeswax based finish will be just fine. Right, I'll let that sit for a while, then I will buff it off and it will all be over for now. Until the next one. So we're done. What will I do next? Well, it's going to be that project that I have referred to already, but not actually got around to, namely the small dining table and the chair for my grandson. I should prioritize that now. When will I do it? Not sure, but it'll be sometime soon. I do have some other things to attend to on my Monster Guitars channel. I need to spend a little bit of time there and also some time working on an assignment. See, even when I'm not working, I still have lots to do. I do look forward to the next time I get to do something for you. Please come back soon. Until then, I'm the People's Carpenter.